Greetings and salutations. Welcome to my Mastering Productivity class project. So here's what I will cover: why I took this class, what I did for each of the following sections, and my final thoughts. I'll be talking about what I did in the past, what I'm implementing now, what kind of worked, what kind of didn't, and just to give an overview of how each of these segments affected me. So as for why I took this class, well, my life was a mess. I was overwhelmed, overworked. My physical and mental health wasn't good at all and getting worse. And I just couldn't find anything to help me get things done. Like, I tried several different things and nothing could keep up, mainly with the fact that my health was so inconsistent and it really couldn't balance my heavy workload, even though I was overworking myself. The flexibility just was not there. So I would, like, for example, plan out my projects for the week with my task, events, everything I wanted to do. And it'd be going fine. And then one poor health day or a sudden, health episode or something happens. And then I have to reorganize everything again. And having to do that over and over again was already, make detrimental to me and making it worse because I'm already not doing anything. And I feel like I'm spending more time replanning than doing anything. And, it just became too much. And even after I realized I was planning too much for my health to handle, it was still just difficult to get on track, even when I cut a lot of things down. Thankfully, our teacher Thomas Frank mentioned the concept of having a system during one of his Notion videos. And if we wanted to know more about it, we could learn about it on his class at Skillshare. And I was like, oh my goodness, so this is it. This is what I'm missing. I didn't realize that it would be a collective of things that need to work together instead of just one and or two things. So let's jump into what happened. Manage your task. So first, one of the biggest issues I think I had was with task management is not knowing the difference between a task, an event, and a project. From my understanding, a task needs to be done before a certain point. Events are done in a specific time, and a project is a task with multiple steps in it. Because of this, I bounced around very frustrated for several years. I bought so many different types of store planners. I started making my own planners. And then I finally landed in bullet journaling that year most of us hated, specifically because that particular year made me lose so much progress with anxiety and depression that I had made. And it was just really difficult to be productive for a whole lot of reasons, which happened to a lot of people. But I just felt like I was struggling. But when I started with bullet journaling, that's when it started making more sense to me. Things started getting better. And even though I wasn't doing it right because I kept trying to make it really elaborate and decorative, which is fine if you do, but I was only doing that because I felt I should as an artist, not because I particularly wanted that. And so once I got that out of my head, it became really good for tracking my physical and mental health, but I was still very overwhelmed. And that was because I realized I kept migrating tasks over and over again, not realizing that those tasks weren't tasks, they were projects. And this is when I learned about the whole task event project thing and that everything does not have to be in my bullet journal. This was a huge changer. And so after looking at different project management software, I chose ClickUp. And even though it says one app to replace them all, I do just use it for projects. And I have a lot of things that are projects. And mostly everything else goes in Notion too, but I'll talk about that later. But I really like ClickUp because, one, the thing that mainly got me was it has automatic date adjustments. So, like, if I go ahead and plan everything out with dates and then my health just says, oh, no, you're not, I can click the main date and adjust it and all the subtasks will automatically do it. I like that I can track the time to see how long I've actually worked on things. I like that I can estimate so I can try to figure out how long does it actually take me to do things when I'm not well, or kind of in the middle. You know, it has a lot of different features that just really resonated with me. And so that's why I like it, especially like this window, because this is when, like, a task window that you put in with your project. And so you got your description area, you got your subtask and your comments, and you could have attachments and stuff. And each of the subtasks open their own windows like this. And they also have their own little, time trackers and estimates and dates and etc. And so it just really works for me in that way. And while they do have a doc thing built in, I usually don't use docs unless I know it's something that's going to be very specific to this project and specific to this project only. And then when it's done, I'm just going to put it in Notion. And if it's just something that has a lot of information that I'm going to keep and is interconnected anyway, it just flat out goes into Notion from the beginning. But one of the things that I did not realize until we were taking this class, like once again, something I did not know, was about um, picking a system to organize your task. And so after looking around, I decided to go by the Getting Things Done method by David Allen. So he has the process of you capture, you collect what has your attention, you clarify what it means, and then you organize, put it where it belongs, you reflect, you review frequently, and you engage, which is simply do. And this has helped so much. Like this is like a basic kind of chart about how you decide where things go. If you look online, there are people who have far more in-depth videos and blog posts about it that'll get you started. And I actually use kind of a modified version of this because I needed to add some things. But in my ClickUp workspace, each of my lists for different types of tasks, like I have an inbox, and then I have an in progress list. I have a next actions. I have the projects. I have these things are on hold because I'm waiting on someone. These things are just on hold because of something I have to do. This is already on my calendar, and having that there and being able to drop those things in those categories was incredibly helpful for me. And then being able to move things because, when you work in church, and I was a ministry leader of I was the only person in it. And so one day it's like everybody's like, hey, we need you to do this, and then you do this. And that shuffle was hard too. But now that I've got something like this, it made it more easy. And of course, since I use this just for project, my day to day things go in my bullet journal, which leads us to setting up your calendar. I use both my bullet journal and Google Calendar, probably my bullet journal the most. In fact, technically, I have three. I have a travel one, a home one, and a church one. And I know that's a lot of calendars, but it works for me having a lot of calendars. Like the travel one, I use to carry for different appointments and events and everything. And for the family members, like we all have one of these. And so we try to make sure we don't overlap with appointments or things that would be inconvenient or difficult for one another. And on the monthly pages, I'll like put symbols and times. And then on the weekly pages, we'll put more details, especially if it's something that's very specific to going out. So that way I don't have to clutter my regular bullet journal because I don't like taking it out the house. So this works really well. And as you can see with this particular thing, I did have to write in all the dates and the months and stuff because a lot of them just come blank like this. But it only took me like 20 minutes to do the entire year. I just sat down and just listened to a podcast and I went out for it. And so it's not bad. So my personal one that I have, this is where things usually start for me to be more mindful of what I do, why I do it, and how I spend my time. And also to help me take care of myself because I really wasn't. I kept telling myself I was, or I was doing that. I'm fine, and I wasn't. But this helps me to make sure too that I'm not spending all my energy being everything to everybody. And so I write things here first. And if the squares are too full, it's a sign that I'm going overboard. I'm taking too much responsibility, or just something isn't going right. And no, like I said, I don't always, decorate or anything. I just thought the stickers were cute on this one, which is why I showed it to you. But I do always do a 2-page calendar spread unless I know the month is going to be slow, and then I do a 1-page thing. Now, my church bullet journal, I'm actually not using right now because I'm on a long sabbatical because my health got bad due to the overwork and stress. And I had the church calendar separate because there were a lot of different things. There are events, there's events, the planning for the events, the meetings for the events, and all kinds of different things. And so having that separate calendar and not mixing it in with what was going on in my bullet journal, especially since I wanted that to be mainly about fixing my physical and mental health, was very helpful to me. And I know that like now I have things combined, but before having it separate, it changed things a lot for me. Well, I should say when I started this class, I had it separate. Now I kind of have things together, which I actually started taking this class last year and I'm just getting to this project, well, finishing this project, but I was excited about it. This class has been good to me, so I wanted to share. And so with all those additional calendars, when things are finalized, they go in my Google Calendar. Now, this is more for me to just visualize the time I have versus me to just plan events for. Like, I know, like you see, there's a lot of calendars, there's a lot of colors and blocks. I'm not actually color blocking. I'm not actually time blocking, I guess, in a sense. what I'm doing is putting in, I have like the basic things for self-care and a few other things. And so I can visualize the actual time I have. So I can see like when I want to do an event, like let's say that we have a meeting on Monday night and I have a webinar training Tuesday morning. That means Tuesday night and possibly Wednesday morning, I don't need to schedule anything. But before I started putting things into my Google Calendar like that, I wouldn't know that. When I was straight using my Google Calendar, I would just put things in and it wouldn't register with me how many hours was going on and how I was really spending my energy, you know? So this really just helps make sure I do the basics to take care of myself and to let me know, hey, you actually have time for this. Hey, you don't have time for that. So that way I don't overstrain my health. And it does make things a lot easier. Like once you put it in and you see, and it's like, oh, okay. And so that's helped me a whole lot. And so now we're at take your notes. Now, like I said, I actually started this class last year, so my things have changed, but I'm going to talk about what I had before and what I'm going to do now. So I'm using, of course, this is Notion. I'm currently rearranging my spaces because needs have changed. But I just wanted to show what I had before. Like before I had like on this sources thing on the left, it was all these different databases for all these different information I have. And this picture inside, like it has the foot of the bookshelf, or this one where it has videos um, that were helpful. And all of these were always related back to my master notes pages. And to keep the databases consistent, they had like the same little life buckets on each of them. And most of them had the same tags and everything. But right now, I've decided to go ahead and I've created an all sources database that has most of the ones shown here, like in it. Like the bookshelf needs to stay the bookshelf. The scripture one still needs to stay the scripture one is separate. And I'll show you why on the next thing. But, for the most part, all of these go together and it's easier to find. Because the problem I was having is I couldn't find things as much as I wanted to. After a certain amount of having these web articles, it was like, oh, well, what am I doing? And I've decided now to make a master notes like based on topics versus making notes in my directly on the copies. Like I realized I need to keep original copies of these web articles. Cause one of the things I realized, like at the top where it has, I got a scripture and then I have a scripture and I have from me. And I realized I don't think I had noted on any of the other things, scriptures that I changed better for my understanding. And these little marks go to a scripture database so I can just quickly go to it and go back. But when I went and I looked, I was like, oh my goodness. And then I looked at things further, like this bottom one, I see I have a highlight and I see I have a call out, but I couldn't tell what I added and what I didn't on a lot of them. And that happened a lot with Christian articles. Like I didn't realize I had 5 articles about Advent when I could just have a master notes thing about Advent and copy and paste the parts I need and just make references to it, which is what I'm doing now. And so this is working better for me so I can see, because I'm ending up with a whole lot of information. And this is why I wanted to start using Notion for my notes, because Google Docs just wasn't working for me. It did with some things, but it wasn't enough. And it wasn't working for me because of how I was organizing my digital files, even though I still like using Notion now too better. So honestly, what I did for this is I made my main buckets of where they needed to be, and I went from hierarchy to from there. And I made sure that I did buckets like that worked for me, like how the family, home, medical, year, month, and doctor situation. Because normally, like when I saw one, it had like the medical and it had the doctors and then the years and stuff. But it's easier for me to remember what happened to my health by year, because some years have just been that much harder than others. And it's easier versus okay, trying to figure out what doctor and piece them together like that. And I'm still going through my flash drives with the same structure. Like I made a list of the hierarchy and structure, and I was faithful to it on the computer. And I've been going through it on my jump drives, and I had a ton of them because I didn't know how to organize, and having things not organized made me anxious. And so my solution was having a flash drive for everything, which is bad. And that happened also a lot with my physical files, which is probably the bane of my existence aside from email, but I'll talk about email later. So these photos are actually neater than some of the spaces I have. Like, I am not joking. I have books, I have notebooks. I have binders of all sizes. I have composition notebooks. I have sketchbooks, A5 notebooks, and all kinds of other written materials and things all throughout my living space. And hardly any of it was organized. Like some maybe the binders were inside, but everything else it wasn't. And because, like I said, I didn't really know how to organize, I started different notebooks over because not mixing things up without order made me anxious. So the solution was have a notebook for everything, which again was bad. And so I really needed, the clarity on how to adjust this. And so I will say a warning, all my important papers were organized very quickly and they're on a file folder rack, like right behind my desk. And I used them in the same for the digital files. And it was very easy. Things that were too old, like, hey, you don't have to keep that. It was shredded and I moved on about that. But things when it comes to physical documents, I'm talking more about my notes and my resources and everything. Because that's what I have the most of. And so the question was, how are these things connected? How can I keep things accessible without it just being askew everywhere and chaotic? Because, I have art stuff, I have sewing stuff, church stuff, health stuff, writing stuff, and all kinds of things. And I actually use like all these things too. And so that's what made it more difficult. So first I decided to separate it in the same buckets I did for my digital files. Then I would take those buckets and I would organize them in piles by hierarchy. And then I would go through and everything I didn't think was of value, if it was good, I donated it. If it was not necessarily great, but the material was good, I reused it because I'm an mixed media artist and I do that. And if it wasn't, I either threw it in the trash or recycled it. Afterwards, when I got into all the final piles, I looked and I said, okay, which one of these are full and which one of these are empty? And I did that so I can start combining things in an organized manner. And when I say combine, I don't mean rewrite everything. I mean putting similar papers together. Like this bottom right is a drawing exercise from when I took drawing class in college. And I have a whole sketchbook for that. And I have all these different exercises that I want to keep and that I use. And so since they're one-sided, I literally just glued all of them into that sketchbook. The same thing with this very weird makeshift folder that I made. That's a different college notebook I had for sculpture and mixed media. And I just put that particular set of plans in just right in there and it worked for me. And things that were double-sided, like I had the binders and I put them in protective cover sheets and I had them with separate folders. And I just made sure that things had like things that didn't have indexes or table of contents. I made table of contents and I just put them in. Same thing when it came to like the different A5s that I have. When I figured out, okay, well, this is a space, this is a break, I would put a decoration like down here with this tree picture. So that way I would know and I could write and leave a new space for a table of contents and go from there. And this is what gave me a lot of sense of order, like and I did that with sketchbooks and a lot of things, using the cardstock to make the difference. So that way I know where things are. And now I don't have to ever buy notebooks again because I have a ton, or at least for some years, now that I've separated in a way that won't make me anxious. So this is my get better at email was great for me because email has always been my enemy. I had more than 15 email addresses when I started this class, and all of them had at least 1,000 in their inbox. Most of them had a few thousand. Again, I didn't understand how to organize things or even really properly use tags and folders. And so I made emails for all my life buckets. Um, because some things were interesting and some things weren't, I kept subscriptions to any and everything. I had hundreds, I'm not kidding. I had hundreds of emails to myself with articles, resource notes, websites, etc. in several of the emails. I was holding on to anything that I thought might be useful, but not in a way that let me know, hey, this is useful. So what I did was I typed in YouTube zero inbox, and a whole lot of videos came up, including one by our teacher Thomas Frank on how to get down to zero inbox. And even the idea that one day I can have manageable emails took a huge amount of anxiety because every time I needed to get on for work, I would just freeze up because, I've got like 3,000 emails and different things like that. But it was easier to change things once I knew how to get the help for it. So I sorted out the least used ones at first and start getting rid of them. I unsubscribed to everything that wasn't relevant right now. And anything that had information, I put them in the proper Notion database or I actually did tags. Like I made tags organically as they came. Like I only kept a third, although I'm gonna remove some more of those. But one, like for example, I have a shopping email. All my coupons and store signups and everything go to there because I just don't want to get 10 emails from, the cafe that I really like in my other inboxes. So I think that that's practical. And anything that's not practical or serve a purpose, I'm just going to get rid of. I unsubscribe from anything that was an automatic sign up. Again, if I thought it was interesting, I saved the website into my website database in the Notion instead of, keeping the subscription. I stopped emailing myself because again, everything goes properly into Notion where it needs to be or into the project that it's related to. I made sub labels and labels, like I said, organically as I needed them versus writing what I thought I need. Because when I was putting ones that I thought I need, a lot of them, when I went back, they were empty and there was no point. And I applied filters to have a little bit of automation, which helped a lot because like some leadership trainings and tech workshops and things, they send you a lot of different emails, but I want to take those classes and website, web workshops and stuff, but I don't want to miss it. And so like I made a tag for possible trainings and then I made filters so all of it goes in there. So when it's a good or decent week with my health, I can go in that folder, I can see who has what, and then I can sign up and register for things in there instead of just having my inbox full of all this stuff from all these people when I'm only, reading like a fourth of the emails they send. And of course, I'm going through everything and it's going to take a while. Like there are some things, of course, you can just mass delete. But for other things, I am making sure to take time to read it because I found a lot of sentimental things, including things from people who aren't here anymore. And so I was so glad that I decided to go through and find it. Like I found things that need to go on my CV, like art shows I forgot I participated in, workshops I forgot to help, forums I forgot I was a part of. And then I found a lot of resources that I just like a lot of the things in my room, I can't get them again. Like even though I'm 36, a lot of these things that I've gotten have from people who are much older than me. And the way that they do it is, everybody copies everything and passes it around. And that's the same thing how these electronic files did when in the early days people would scan them and make them PDFs and send them. And so there were a lot of things that it would take a whole lot of time and money to get again if I could. And so I'm glad that I have now spaces for everything, so it makes it easier to do. Now, I'm not spending all of my time just going through all these emails. Sometimes I will pick a certain day and just do a chunk of time for it, but because I have so many, I try to keep that limited so I'm not sitting all day in an email. And, other times I dedicate even smaller parts, but I'm going to go through the whole process because it's really been paying off for me. Which leads to the quick capture method. So I have a ClickUp Create Task widget on my homepage. For whatever reason, my Notion widget does not work on my phone, but it's okay because I rarely drop things in Notion that don't already have a home or belong in a database. Things like that tend to go in my bullet journal on that day because I usually make mine daily in a collection of my bullet journal on my monthly dump page. So between actually clicking in on Notion, because you see it's also on my home screen, and going to the quick links, it works very fine. When I'm adding things to databases, like, when you go to the share for your phone or your tablet or whatever, I have an unsorted view so the new things don't get lost. And I just go and put them in the right place on review day. Review day. My review day is Sunday because by Sunday, I found out everything I need to know personally from work, from church, and everything else to plan ahead so I can hit the ground running on Tuesday because Mondays I'm off. So sometime in the afternoon or the evening, I do my weekly reflection. I reconcile all my tasks and my projects. I update my money tracker spreadsheet. I plan what I want to try to do that week, and I've been attempting the meal plan, and it's kind of going okay, but kind of not. And I could not have imagined trying the meal plan before I learned any of these things in this class. It would have been way too overwhelming. And it works better for me to do all these things together instead of randomly how I was, especially with the task. I was only reconciling my task at the beginning of, the new month or the previous month. And that's fine if you want to go back and make sure you hadn't, missed anything or you want to pull out specific things to reflect on. But I need to make sure week by week I'm changing things because things change for me so much. And it just works really well. And so my final thoughts is I'm excited to be moving forward in all areas of my life. And if you've made it to the end, thank you. I want to encourage you to take this class if anything I said resonated with you. Like, seriously, at the very least, watch some of the lessons. I'm sure if you came looking for this topic, there will be something here to help you. Remember, first and foremost, that you're building something that works for you. So make sure you take your time and do it right. And don't be afraid of change. If it doesn't work for you, trial and error are going to be your friends here. I hope that your journey to a healthier, more practical way to be productive goes well for you. Bye. Look, thanks and bye.